From the bleachers to the bar, this is the Home Runs and Handshakes podcast. Welcome in, boys and girls. This is episode 6 of the Home Runs and Handshakes podcast. Happy National Fried Chicken Day to everybody. Did not realize that was a holiday until very recently in the day. I am Jameson Taillon. I am joined as always by noted all-star snub, but an all-star in all of our hearts. It is Frank Nova. Frank, this marks the first for us on this podcast. We are talking during a Cubs game because Mother Nature conspired against us, and ESPN insisted that they needed a national broadcast. Although I would point out ESPN's broadcast of the All-Star Game selection show was preempted by cornhole today. So it has been quite a day for the worldwide leader in sports. But anyway, how's your day been?
It's been great, and I don't need to observe Fried Chicken Day because in Chicago you have Cheap Chicken Monday every Monday, which is far more significant.
That is, God, you're so right about that. And if I needed anybody to tell me about the traditions of the jewels and such, I already know. Just ask Frank Nova about it very clearly. Speaking of tradition, Frank, we have a Midsummer Classic to talk about. That's right. We have the Cubs All-Star representatives. And I know there's been a lot of bones to pick. I think a lot of people angry about the Cubs that did get in. Naturally, no being upset about PCA. Pete Crow, our guy, of course, got into his first All-Star game, and Kyle Tucker also voted in as a starter. Maybe a little bit surprising that they got one other representative, and it wasn't Seiya Suzuki or Michael Busch. It was actually Matthew Boyd. So I think we probably just start with kind of the formality of talking about PCA and Kyle Tucker getting in. Obviously, just incredible seasons for both of them. And Frank, I thought it was kind of a foregone conclusion they'd be in the game in some way. Just thought it was kind of nice that they both got voted in by the fans.
And I'm really surprised this is Kyle Tucker's first time starting.
Mm-hmm.
But they've both been exceptional. They've been among the National League leaders in WAR all year, specifically outfielders. To me, having both of them at the game was an absolute no-brainer. The only player that was more of a slam dunk in the National League than Pete Crow was Ohtani, simply because you knew everybody in the world was going to vote for Ohtani.
And rightfully so. I mean, that guy is revolutionizing baseball. He's back pitching. And then, of course, oh, by the way, still hitting the absolute snot out of the ball. His WAR this season, just as a DH, is just simply unbelievable. And this National League team is really, really freaking loaded. I think that it goes without saying that with a team that's got guys like Paul Skeens on it, you're going to have a really strong roster. And so ultimately, you were going to have guys that kind of got left out that maybe other years would have made it in. We will talk about some of them, but I did want to hit you with a trivia question, Frank, and that is, do you remember the last Cubs player to start an All-Star game in center field?
My guess would be Rick Monday.
It was not Rick Monday. It was actually quite a bit more recent than that, if you want to take a second stab at it.
Oh, you are correct. In 2016, the whole damn team made it, Dexter Fowler.
Dexter Fowler did not start that All-Star game. However, it was actually Kosuke Fukudome in 2008 started in center field for the National League. I believe Alfonso Soriano made the team that year, but did not end up playing because he was injured. So that would have been two Cubs starting in the outfield. However, this would be the first time, Frank, since 1936 that the Cubs will have two outfield starters in the All-Star game, assuming that both guys are healthy, fingers crossed. You want to take a stab at who either of those outfielders would have been in 1936? Do you recall that particular Cubs team?
Kai Kyler and Riggs Stevenson.
Neither is correct, but both were really solid guesses. It was Angie Galan and Frank Demery were the two Cubs starters in that 1936 All-Star game.
Augie Galan.
I know, what a guy, right? Like, so much I know about him.
I actually have a great story
about Angie Galan. Please tell me you do.
I do. Augie Galan was roommates on the road with the great Chuck Klein when Chuck Klein was a Cub. And Chuck Klein they were in Philadelphia, which is where Klein played for years, and he had a hot date that night. So he had his suit sent to the cleaners to get it pressed so he'd look his best when he went out. And he puts it in the closet, and Augie was like putting breadcrumbs on a windowsill at the hotel, and pigeons were coming. He kept grabbing pigeons and throwing them in the closet. So his whole thing is Klein's going to open the closet, the pigeons are going to fly out, and it's going to be hilarious. Everybody's going to laugh. So sure enough, there's like 5 or 6 pigeons in the closet. Klein opens the closet. These pigeons fly out the window. Everybody laughs. And then Klein goes to take his suit out, which is now completely covered in pigeon shit.
God.
There's
All right, so I should have just known that you were going to have a story about Mr. Galan. Like, that is completely on brand for you. I literally cannot even come up with a better way of phrasing that. How on earth do we follow that up? I think we talk about Matthew Boyd, and I hesitate to say that he was a surprise, right? Because you see the statistics for him, one of the top whips in the National League, 12 quality starts in the season, I think close to top 5 in ERA, coming into today at 2.65. Just a really solid season for a Matthew Boyd in his first season with the Cubs. And I know that the National League, they of course have some really incredible pitching on that team, but I just thought it was a great testament to him kind of being this like steady point in a Cubs team that has dealt with so many injuries this season in that rotation. Your Shota Imanagas, your Justin Steeles, and now your Jameson Taillons. He's been a bulwark for this team and really solid starting pitcher. And I am not a guy who puts a lot of stock in all-star game spots. Like, I think the whole concept is kind of meh anyway. But I do love it in an instance like this where a guy makes it. And I think it's a great testament to Major League Baseball and to the players that Matthew Boyd is in. I was really happy with the fact that he in particular got selected.
Yeah, especially because, so much of the time they want to go with the sexy picks, the especially, they would have loved to figure out some way to get Miz into the game.
Yeah.
Just have him pump it in at 103, even though he's only pitched a few games in the majors. They still would have loved to have gotten him in. And here's a guy, he's been bouncing around the league, had Tommy John, 34 years old. It's his first All-Star game.
Yep.
And so, yeah, to me, that's actually a better story than look, Miz throws 103. He's either going to get into his share of All-Star games or he's going to flame out like Noah Syndergaard. What happens next remains to be seen.
Yep. And I think that's a great comparison, Frank. And I do want to mention, like, speaking of great stories, we're going to get into kind of some guys for the Cubs who you could probably argue were snubs, but I have a feeling you and I can kind of suss out the logic behind their exclusion from the game. What did you think of Rob Manfred doing the Legends pick to get Clayton Kershaw in the All-Star game?
That was crap.
Care to elaborate on that, sir? Any other reaction?
Clayton Kershaw's got enough accolades. You don't need to make one up for him.
I can get behind that. I compared it to I'm a wrestling fan, and I try not to talk about it very often because I know that is just something that is going to turn people off. Like, you either care about it or you don't. But it reminded me of the way they handled John Cena getting into Elimination Chamber and him just declaring that he was going to be in. I envision a scenario where Clayton Kershaw is like, "Hey, Rob, I want to be in the All-Star game." And Rob Manfred goes, "Okay, Clayton, sure, that sounds great." So that's the only reason I'm making that comparison, especially because they use the quote-unquote Legends pick to get him in.
Yeah, and I mean, anytime you're comparing a sport to wrestling, there's problems.
Well, to be fair, though, the All-Star game is an entertainment product. And so I feel like the comparison in this particular instance maybe has a little bit of validity to it that it wouldn't have otherwise. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can get into the snubs here. I think that the first one that we obviously have to bring up is the Major League Baseball leader in RBI, Mr. Seiya Suzuki, did not get into the All-Star game. It was obviously going to be a really tough sell to get him in as a DH because you already had Shohei Ohtani in the game. And so you ended up having a second guy, and Kyle Schwarber did get that spot. And if you compare their statistics, they're very similar. Like Kyle Schwarber, batting average is comparable, obviously way better than him in terms of his on-base percentage. Seiya's got a little bit of an edge in RBI and in slugging percentage. What was your reaction to that, Frank? Did you think that MLB got that right by having Schwarber in the game, or did you think that Seiya should have gotten in?
Schwarber has a much better weighted runs created plus.
Mm-hmm.
I love Seiya. I would have loved to have seen him in the game, but my feeling is they have the two best DHs in the National League going.
I am inclined to agree. I think the only other thing that I would caution people on is I have seen a few folks make the argument that based on WAR, Kyle Schwarber should get in. I would point out that his WAR gets awfully protected because I think he's only had 5 total defensive appearances this year. And Seiya Suzuki, who is not a good defender, I think is around like 26. And I think that definitely dragged his WAR down. And so I think that particular statistic, you do have to kind of throw out that little bit of a caveat with that.
Yeah, I didn't even pay any attention to that because the spot was for DH. So
Yeah.
I just looked at straight offensive statistics. So you got to kind of toss WAR out the window.
I will say that I thought you could probably make a little bit of a better case that Michael Busch deserved a spot in this All-Star game. Did you realize that he's in the top 10 in Major League Baseball in OPS? I actually did not know that until I looked that up today. Like that, his numbers this season, I've looked at his slash line. 293, 377, 562. He's got a 3.4 WAR, best WAR in MLB that is not in the All-Star game, by the way. And I get it. Matt Olson, he is having a good season. I know a lot of folks were like, oh, Matt Olson just got in because he's the hometown guy. That's just not true. That's not accurate. Matt Olson
he's leading National League first baseman in WAR.
Bingo. That's exactly it. And like Michael Busch is just like right there. And I think to me, I'm going to take away from it that he is comparing favorably to Pete Alonso and Matt Olson. That is really damn good company to be in. And I would also go a step further and say that I think that if anybody drops out of the All-Star game, and that includes like a DH, if like something like that were to happen, I think Michael Busch has got to be on that short list to get called. He has absolutely earned it this season for sure. Like I think that of the two, I think that Michael Busch should have gotten into the All-Star game. I understand why Seiya Suzuki didn't. It just ended up being a numbers game, and that's just really all there is to it.
Yeah, it's not like Michael Busch isn't going because they picked Bryce Harper. The two guys, Alonso and Olson are both ahead of him in WAR, and Freeman was voted in.
Yeah.
So,
I think ultimately it just came down to the fact that first base is a really strong position in the National League, and it was just a numbers game for Busch.
Yeah.
Like I think that's basically it, man. That's all you can really say about it.
Yeah, this is karmic revenge for Brian LaHare making it.
Speaking of that, you all right with Hunter Goodman making it into the All-Star game over Carson Kelly? I mean, Colorado had to have somebody, and I suppose
that's kind of where it is.
Sense. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of where it is. It's the same thing with what's his name? The big goofy left fielder for the Marlins, Kyle.
Oh, Kyle Stowers.
Kyle Stowers, thank you.
Yeah.
That's my weekly guy in his 60s brain glitch. But yeah, Kyle Stowers.
The show is still young. You might still have another one. We might have to say that it was one that you didn't cash in when you were at the Ringo Starr concert.
There you go. Yeah, like another reason you couldn't even take Seiya as an outfielder because a guy like Kyle Stowers needed to go. The three best players on the Marlins are all outfielders. So an outfielder was going from Miami.
Yes, absolutely. I have to caveat this again by saying that the All-Star game is an exhibition. It doesn't matter. I refuse to get bent out of shape about it. And I know we just spent 5 minutes talking about All-Star game snubs, but I do have to ask, is it time to get rid of the every team gets a guy in if a guy like Shane Smith from the White Sox is an All-Star?
No.
I agree. I completely agree with it because, again, it is an entertainment product. I think if they still had the home field advantage in the World Series thing, then I could see a scenario where it's like, look, like if it's going to mean something, you can't just be like giving out participation medals for this thing. But given what it is, bring them on in. I do not care about that. I think that that's totally fine.
And the bottom dweller teams have to have that one thing they can hang their hat on. So,
Well, maybe they should hang their hat on getting better at baseball if I had to throw out a suggestion.
Well, yeah, but that's not something you could turn a light switch. I mean, the White Sox were so bad, you know, they're ballyhooing uh a prospect coming up who's ranked 95th in MLB Pipeline.
Yeah.
but
Well, I mean,
but
that's yeah.
it's not the best there is. It's the best they got.
I mean, that's accurate. They do have a couple of guys who are really close to the top of the heap in terms of MLB Pipeline that they should realistically be excited about. I just know that Colson Montgomery was always a guy that they were getting really fired up by. And as you mentioned, though, he almost slipped out of the top 100 prospect ratings that they just released. So, you got to take all that with a grain of salt. But again, I think it's something that, like, I'm just not going to get bent out of shape about. Like, I know that it ultimately, potentially cost the Cubs getting Seiya in, Michael Busch in, whatever. It doesn't matter to me ultimately. Like, it would have been great to see those guys. I think it would have been awesome for a guy like Seiya to get in. I mean, he's been one of the best hitters in baseball over the last calendar year. You can look up countless statistics about that, but I just don't think it's that big of a deal, honestly, when all is said and done.
Yeah.
All right, I got one last thing for you before we move on to our next topic here. Did you see the statistics, speaking of guys that are in this, kind of they got snubbed kind of game? Did you see what happened with Michael Busch on his 3 home run night, where that compares him historically?
Yeah, it was really wild to see that there were 3 Cubs the only 3 Cubs to ever have 3 home run games against St. Louis all did it on July 4th.
It's so crazy. I never would have guessed that in a million years. For those of you keeping track at home, Moises Alou in 2003, Cubs made the playoffs. And then Hank Lieber in 1939. I do not believe they made the World Series in 1939, but
they did not. They made it in 38.
There you go. See, I was like 38 and 45, I was pretty sure, but I wasn't alive back then. So I will say, though, Michael Busch, the only one of the 3 that actually won the game that he hit the 3 home runs in. Mm-hmm. So there is that as well.
Yeah, the 38 pennant on September 28th, and I know that because September 28th is also my birthday. September 28th, 1938 was the date of Gabby Hartnett's home run in the Gloman.
Ah, yes. Very famous moment in Cubs history. Look it up, kids.
That was the end of the Cubs 3 years. 3 years they did 29, 32, 35, 38.
Yep. Man, what a time to be alive that must have been, with the Cubs getting the World Series every 3 years and losing. Very Brooklyn Dodgers of them, I would say.
Yeah, and in 29 was the Harold Emke World Series, where the
the names that float around in that head of yours.
The Philadelphia A's had this guy, veteran pitcher, was kind of done, and Connie Mack just told him, "Look, just go follow the Cubs around for a while." So Emke went to a bunch of Cub games, scouted the Cubs, went out and set a then World Series record of 13 strikeouts in a game.
Jeez, that has to be nice to just go send like an aged, veteran out there and be like, hey, go scout for a while instead of, helping your team to get the American League pennant.
Yeah, well, because back then you had 8 teams in the American League and 1 pennant. There was no playoffs, no anything.
Yeah.
So they had a handy enough lead to where they could send a guy out. There were times where the pennant would be clinched. There were years the Yankees damn near clinched the pennant on Labor Day.
Yeah. How nice that must have been for them. Although, the whole argument of, they're going to get rusty. I highly doubt a team with like Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth is going to get rusty. But I digress. We're not here to talk about that. You know what we are here to talk about, Frank? We have one more thing to bring up before we get to our next segments, and that is, I don't have like fancy music for this or anything, but It is our weekly Pete Crow walk-off updates. This is a guy that we gave an award to because he just loves running out on the field before, the play ends on a walk-off, and it's become his thing. You said it exactly right the other day when they beat the Cleveland Guardians on the walk-off. You thought for a second there was like this little itty-bitty glimmer of thought that Pete Crow was going to tackle Nico Horner as he ran down the third baseline to home plate. If Claire can play the video for our viewers on YouTube, you'll see what we mean.
Boys on the top step waiting for that dub, and guess who's out first? PCA. Doesn't matter the night of what you're having as a player. Your boys coming through. You get out there and show them some love, and big win, big sweep. That's so cool, man.
I'm just going to go ahead and say it, Frank. That looked like Chris Conti trying to tackle Randall Cobb. That's about where my head went on that.
Pete Crow is a human bat dog.
He really is. Like he showed a video of him the other day on the broadcast going and talking to all the ushers and concession stand workers and vendors at Wrigley Field, and the faces that everybody made when they saw him were completely they reminded me a lot of that Philadelphia Phillies, the new therapy puppy that they're training.
Mm-hmm.
And the Philly fanatic just like staring into its eyes like it was like the Lion King or something, just like this incredible moment. And that's how everybody looked at PCA. And then you had obviously the fans that were out in center field had Pete Crow-Armstrong across their chests, and very importantly had the dash, which I just respect that level of accuracy. But that guy really is kind of like the bat dog for this Cubs team. Just everybody, like, their eyes light up when they see him.
Well, what's funny about everybody getting excited to see Pete Crow is I worked for the Cubs for a few games in 2017. And there is a locker room that all of the guest services and security and all that, they all have this big locker room down underground underneath 1111 Waveland. And you walk down a corridor to get to the stairs to go up into the ballpark. At that moment, you walk past the doorway to the Cubs clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on when you get to the ballpark, like one time I came around a corner and almost face planted into Anthony Rizzo's chest. So yeah, you see all the players and you see them in their street clothes and everything. So to see them that excited about Pete Crow when they probably see him just walking in and, depending on, like, it was funny. I was guest services, but they had me do like security stuff just because I guess I'm large. And also I think I'm large and people tell me I look mean. People who don't know me think I look mean. But I would be one of the people who would stand by the left field gate to make sure that the players can get out to the street, at which point they would be escorted to their cars.
Sure.
But so yeah, you get to see all the players. And what's funny is in those brief moments, you would actually get some interaction with some of the players. Sometimes they'd say hello or whatever. And the one thing I remember was the one person who said hello to every single person he passed when he came in and said good night to every single person he passed when he left, Jake Arrieta.
Wow. That's something. I would not have guessed that. Not that, like, I ever thought Jake was a jerk. Like, I always kind of got the vibe that he was like one of the dudes, but I wouldn't have guessed it would have been him. That's really cool.
Yeah. So
anyway. I thought you were going to say like Chris Denorfia or something.
No. But oh my God, one of the things that happens is when you see these people, the job I currently have, I got my call with my offer on opening night 2017. I'm in the tunnel walking out to the stairs when they called me, and I'm on the phone talking to them, and we're talking money and everything. And John Lester is looking at me like I'm crazy.
Well, John Lester knew that you were very clearly.
Right. But
he had you pegged better than you know yourself.
But one of the things with John Lester, you get a better grasp of just the size of some of these guys. Like John Lester looks like if somebody crossbred a human being and a Kodiak bear.
That's a very fair assessment of his size. I have seen him in person. He's a large dude.
Yeah, and the guy who really I couldn't believe how large he was until I walked past him was John Lackey.
Oh, yeah. That
He is
actually tracks.
enormous.
I wouldn't have even thought of that, but yeah, totally.
He is enormous.
He has like those Tony Robbins teeth too, where it's like, are you gonna like bite my head off like literally right now? Like I'm a little bit scared of you.
Yeah, I think he was eating a baby when he walked past me.
You might have been right. I don't know. We try not to talk, poorly of the no longer Cubs, but that was definitely a vibe that I would have gotten.
It depends. One of the guys on Chuggo actually had a thing on Instagram today where they were asking people who is your most disliked former Cub. And people were saying, Wilson Contreras, Ryan Theriot.
Why Ryan Theriot of all guys?
Well, Terrio's the guy who said, I'm on the right side of the rivalry now or something like that. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. Dave Kingman, for crying out loud.
Why wouldn't anybody have said like Greg Maddux or like, Lou Brock or something? I guess he wouldn't have been interviewing a lot of 70-year-olds, but
yeah.
All right, you know what? Enough of our frivolous talk about the past. Let's talk about the future, Frank, and that is the Cubs prospect pool. We had a new update this week, I believe, to the MLB Pipeline top 100 prospects, a whopping 4 Cubs on that list right now. And Frank, we're just going to knock them off in the order in which they appeared on the list. Owen Casey, still the top-rated Cubs prospect according to Major League Baseball. Number 43, got a really nice statistic here for you. Since June 1st, Mr. Casey slashing 337, 450, 717 with 9 home runs, 17 extra base hits, and a 15% walk rate, 5 homers in his last 5 games entering action today. Owen Casey showing out a little bit. It makes you wonder if there's an injury to a Cubs outfielder. Is he the guy that comes up, or is he the guy that gets dealt out in a trade if they go out and make a massive splash at the trade deadline? It just kind of feels like we're approaching a fork in the road with an Owen Casey, and I think that something's going to happen one way or another, but he is absolutely earning that number 43 spot right now.
Yeah. And I know that when the Cubs were talking to the Marlins and putting the Jesus Luzardo deal together, they liked Casey a lot.
Sure.
But like I said before, the 3 best players on the Marlins now are outfielders. So I don't know how much they would want a guy like Casey now. They might look deeper into the Cubs prospect pool for a guy like, say, Jackson Wiggins.
Yeah. Who is, I believe, number 7 now in the top 30 for the Cubs? Number 6 or number 7?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that with Casey, it is very clearly a situation where I think that either he or Kevin Alcantara ends up going. Like, I think that one of those 2 guys is going to get traded, and I think the other one ends up being kind of a backup plan, especially if Kyle Tucker ends up leaving, if they decide not to re-sign Ian Happ after next season. Like, it seems to me that one of those guys is your ideal kind of scenario for a backup plan. I don't think there is a world in which you really would feel overly comfortable trading both of them, if that makes sense. So we can get to, we're going to get to Alcantara. That we'll get to him at the end of this list. But Moises Ballesteros moves up 16 spots on the MLB Pipeline list, now number 53. I did not realize, Frank, he's batting .330, and he's got an on-base percentage this season, .388 in AAA. Like, that guy is still hitting the ball really well, and I like the fact the Cubs are still having him catch regularly. I think that if he's going to be in the minor leagues, if Reese McGuire is going to end up continuing to be your backup catcher while they wait for Miguel Amaya to get healthy, it makes all the sense in the world for me to continue to have him catch games if you really think that he's potentially a guy that's going to be able to slide into that position at some point in the near future. I think they're handling his development really well this season.
Yeah. Yeah. And, getting him some reps behind the plate is going to be paramount for him having any kind of a real future with the Cubs, because, he's you can't have him play first of all, you got Michael Busch at first. Michael Busch is your first baseman for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unless Jonathan Long or someone else just completely just blows up.
Sure.
But for now it's Busch, and Busch has, you know, years left of team control. So he's not going anywhere. So he can't play first. And you know, you can have him as a full-time DH if you're in a situation like if anything happens to Seiya.
Sure.
You know, but Seiya still has a couple years left on his deal.
Yes, he does.
So
and obviously, if you're DHing him, the wear and tear isn't going to be nearly as bad as it would be if you had him playing outfield on a regular basis. I suppose that would theoretically be another option for the Cubs if they were to lose a Kyle Tucker, would be to move Seiya back out to the outfield. I just don't get the sense they would really want to do that.
By the way, I just want to change the subject for one quick second. I know people are listening to this after the Cub game.
Yeah.
And thank you to our tens of listeners. But there's something amazing going on right now. ESPN is doing this thing that I usually hate, which is when they talk to an outfielder while the play is going on. Except they're talking to Wynn, the center fielder.
Jason
Wynn. And while they're talking, the Cubs are just absolutely curb stomping the Cardinals. It's up to 8-0.
Yep.
So they're just stepping up like, hey, how's it feel to be talking to us while your team's neck's getting stepped on?
Yeah, I was wondering who they were talking to, like, because I kept like seeing like kind of a cutaway, but I couldn't see on the TV who they were talking to.
Yeah, they're talking.
That is hilarious that it's him.
I know it. Like, I had to let everybody know how much I'm enjoying this moment of Schadenfreude.
Well, hopefully the Cubs can continue to pour it on, because we've all seen games against the Cardinals where the Cubs have been up 6-7-0 and ended up blowing it. So can they please just continue to do that? That would be really nice.
Yeah.
So anyway, next prospect on our list, number 64, a South Bend Cub, not a AAA Cub. It is Jefferson Rojas. He of 7 home runs, 35 RBI, 14 stolen bases, on base percentage of .391 this season. I have not gotten to watch as many South Bend games as I have, like, say, Iowa games, just because they have so many of their top prospects in Iowa right now. But really, really strong numbers and a great step forward for Jefferson Rojas. One would imagine he's probably going to get bumped up to AA when they get to the All-Star break.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a couple guys on the Cubs. Well, you see that every year where some guys start getting some promotions. So
sure, I think in this case it's well deserved. He's been having a really good year. It's his second year in South Bend. I think it's a logical time to move him up.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys in South Bend that I could see getting that promotion. But yeah, Rojas is a guy, you know, people have watched him play in spring training and have been saying for a while that, you know, he's going to put it together and he's going to be something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's starting to happen for him, and it's good to see. And it would be good to see him get some time in AA. And, you know, it's going to be the same sort of situation where when he's MLB ready, there might not be a spot for him. They're going to need to, you know, he might wind up being a trade piece.
Yeah, could be. And I think that, you know, you're clearly seeing scouts are starting to really take notice of him. I think that is definitely something that's been happening this season. Were there any other guys at the South Bend level that you were kind of tabbing to maybe move up to AA?
Oh God, now I have to look at the roster.
You know what? Why don't we'll have you do that while I discuss Kevin Alcantara, who again is number 86 in Major League Baseball, the last of the Cubs' 4 prospects in the top 100. Greg Huss from the podcast Cubs on Deck, he does really incredible work tracking Cubs prospects, and he had this real good gem about Alcantara, who's got 46 RBI this season, really good slash line, playing really well as of late. He is absolutely mashing 2 pitches in the minors. He is mashing fastballs to the tune of a .500 batting average. And against curveballs, get this, Frank, a .714 on-base percentage against curveballs this season, a slugging percentage of 1.714. You throw him a slider, however, batting average drops to a .150 and a whiff rate of 51%. That is a hilarious dichotomy of success against a fastball and a curveball, and just abject failure against a slider. But I will say, really, really fun watching him play. And again, I reiterate, he's the guy that I think it's either him or Casey that goes. I do not think the Cubs end up trading both of them.
No, and Alcantara is one of these guys where the appeal to him too is that he plays all three positions pretty well in the outfield.
Yep.
Whereas,
Absolutely.
Casey, I've seen Casey play center field. It's best that he doesn't.
It's best that he's a corner guy for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the bat has enough pop in it that I think they would be totally willing to stick him in a corner outfield spot and just let him mash. I think that ultimately would be their ideal scenario with him.
Yeah, but the two guys on South Bend that I'd like to see move up would be Trice and Gallagher.
I knew you wanted to talk about Trice a little bit. What about him gets your blood kind of racing?
Well, he's an interesting guy because they have him playing the outfield, but I know he was drafted as a second baseman.
Yeah.
So he could be one of those. He could be like what Javi Baez is being for the Tigers this year, where he can do the infield spots, he can do the outfield spots. He's got 10 home runs already this year.
Mm-hmm.
He's OPSing. I mean, Rojas is OPSing 862. Trice is OPSing 799. So they're both having really good years.
I'd say that's pretty solid if I had to guess.
And he's got speed. He's stealing bases. He's one of those guys. I'd like to see him start to move up. He could get to the majors and potentially be like a Swiss Army knife guy.
Yeah. That's a great comparison for him, I think. I think that a lot of Cubs fans kind of look at guys like Cowles and Jonathan Long and kind of wonder where they would profile into the Cubs. I think that Trice has a very similar trajectory to those guys in terms of where they would best fit on this roster, it feels like.
Yeah, and Ryan he's got a whip of 1.17. He's over 80 strikeouts. He's done with high A. It's time for him to go to double A.
And you're going to see really good hitters at that level too. Double A is a very tough environment to pitch in, and it really tells you a lot about it. I think that Cade Horton's successes at that level definitely played into the Cubs' decision to bring him up when they did.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be an excellent test for him down the stretch, and I'd imagine that before it's all said and done, he's maybe knocking on the door, late next year if he goes to Double A and has a really good run of it. I think that the Cubs have shown a propensity to kind of try to fit guys into the mix if they're pitching really well at that level of the minor leagues.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is your 4 Cubs in the top 100 prospects for MLB Pipeline. We kind of mentioned pitching a little bit, and so I kind of wanted to delve into this topic a little bit. Cubs, another freaking injury to their pitching staff. Jameson Taillon goes out, has a really solid game, immediately goes on the injured list. Craig Counsell said that he thinks he could be out for a month with a strained calf. Apparently got that doing sprints after his last start, which take it easy on the sprints, apparently, JMO. I know you got to kind of wind down a little bit, but if you're pulling cabs while you're doing that, that is it's not good, man. It's not good.
I think he needs to get Joe Borowski as his fitness instructor.
Good old Sweaty Joe. He would definitely be able to kind of point him in the right direction. The real reason I wanted to bring this up is twofold. One, the Cubs are going to have to figure out who's going to get a start for them, probably against the Yankees, that last start before the All-Star break. They could theoretically slide Boyd and Imanaga up a day and do a bullpen game in the last game of that series against the Yankees. But I wanted to kind of get your take on this, Frank. I had said in our group chat before the show that I wasn't overly fond of the idea of having Pomeranz and Chris Flexen kind of be the openers for that bullpen game on Saturday. I would have preferred them to have had Jordan Wicks start it. And I think that is it fair to say that you disagreed with me on that? Because I kind of got that sense. And so I wanted to get your take on that idea and that usage of Pomeranz and Flexen as the openers.
Well, I actually thought it was a pretty good idea because they didn't go on Friday during that beatdown. Yeah. So they were rested, and
instead you had John Birdie come in and give up 2 runs, and I was like, right. Can you just get this stupid last third out, dude?
John Birdie is no Anthony Rizzo.
No, he is not. He's also not a Ben Zobrist either.
But because they had an afternoon game on Saturday and a night game on Sunday, it was a good time to get the relievers in there, have your bullpen game, and they would get a little bit of extra rest because there's a night game tonight. And
Mhm.
it's turning out to have been just, even though they didn't win the game, and they didn't win the game because Brad Keller had a bad outing, but it was the first bad outing Brad Keller's had in forever.
Bingo.
So,
Heck, it's the first time Drew Pomeranz had given up an earned run all season. Like
right.
I'm definitely not saying this from a perspective of, oh, these results were bad. I just thought that a guy like Jordan Wicks benefits from starting a game instead of like just kind of having him be on the roster to be on the roster, I suppose. Like
Well, I think
maybe
you're
would
going
have
to
gone in
see.
that direction.
I think they didn't want to have Wicks go out there and have his first game back in the majors be in a Cubs Cardinals environment in Wrigley when it's hot and the wind is blowing out.
Okay. I
So
mean,
I think you're going to see Wicks get a start in Minnesota.
you think that's I mean that's what I was thinking too. Like I think that they maybe slide guys around a little bit given that they do have the day off. I think that it's gonna kind of benefit them. I know the Twins are obviously not having the best season they've ever had. I think they're like 3 or 4 games under 500 right now, but I definitely would rather see him go against Minnesota rather than try to go into the Bronx. And I know the Yankees have not been playing well late. By the way, loved the fact, I forget who it was, said, oh, the Toronto Blue Jays just clearly are not a first place team. And then they went up to, the Yankees went up to Toronto and got, just completely annihilated by the Blue Jays, who were now in first place in the East. But
Yep.
I think that it's a way better idea to go into that environment like Minnesota rather than throwing him out there in the Bronx and seeing what happens. I don't envision that ending well if they want to do that to Jordan Wicks. I'd much rather him pitch against Minnesota.
Yeah, I think what they're going to try to do is, um, I think they're going to try to slide guys around, try to get Shota and Boyd pitching in the Bronx.
As long as they don't
And
have Boyd pitch on Sunday, I would really hate for him not to be at least available for the All-Star game. Like I think that he gets in. Who knows if he's ever going to get in again? I
right.
would not be mad if they wanted to make sure that he was still available. So whatever sliding you do, if it's going to be anything, have him pitch on Friday or something. Like don't slide him back a day to Sunday.
Well, I think if they have him go on Saturday, then
Well, he's still
yeah,
fine. Yeah, I'm just
yeah,
saying.
the
Like
All-Star game would basically be his bullpen day.
I think Saturday is his last scheduled start currently. And so
Yeah.
that's what I was just saying. Don't slide him back to get, another start in for somebody else. Like I think that's you want to give him that opportunity to potentially be available out of the bullpen when they go down to Atlanta.
Yeah, and then when they come back from the break, Council can almost reset the rotation.
Sure. And that of course is going to come down to, whether or not the Cubs are going to be in a position where they'll have added a starting pitcher by that point where it's going to matter again too, because you don't have a ton of in-house options right now, given the health of everybody and the fact that Javier Assad is still nowhere near rejoining this team. Like they are going to have to add somebody at the deadline. And especially when you're not going to have to rely on a guy like Colin Ray down the stretch. And then you've got this other issue with Taillon. You have no idea if it'll linger or not. The deadline is going to come up on them sooner than they, can probably prepare for it. I just think they need to get on the ball. And as soon as they can find a team that is willing to make a deal for a pitcher that they want, the Cubs are going to have to jump the market a little bit. And it's going to be tough right now, given kind of where everybody is right now in terms of being buyers and sellers. You have so many teams that are just like so bunched up right now.
Yeah, and one of the guys who's in Iowa and isn't an option to come in and start is Ben Brown. And Brown's one of those guys who might go in a deal too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a Hayden Wisniewski type guy where it just kind of seems like the change of scenery may do him good. Or based on my, bold prediction from last week, maybe he comes in as a solid bullpen arm down the stretch toward the end of the season. Again,
Right.
I'm not going to besmirch what Chris Flexen and Drew Pomeranz have done for this team. I can't see a scenario where you can just keep relying on them to continue doing that as we get down the stretch of the season.
Yeah, and Council, one of the things that makes Council such a good manager is he's so good at managing. He's so good at load management with his bullpen, and he always
Yes.
has been.
Yep,
So
something David Ross notoriously struggled with.
right. David Ross notoriously struggled with a lot of things.
Yeah, please. If you want to rant about David Ross, now is the time and the place, man. You have
Oh
right at it.
man, I'm so happy that we don't have David Ross giving Justin Turner 250 plate appearances.
Well, you know what? I could mention the fact that he keeps getting plate appearance. What'd you think of him getting subbed in for Matt Shaw the other day just to pop out?
I actually wondered if that was kind of his last hurrah before he's going to get DFA'd soon.
You think during the All-Star break, maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
Who do you think replaces him? Do you think they bring up one of the guys from Iowa to kind of fill in for him? What do you think ends up happening?
I mean, if they DFA him, that would clear up a spot on the 40 for Long.
Yep, I think that is a fantastic assumption that they would do that.
And he's a guy who can play third, he can play first.
Yes, he can.
So he can kind of fit into that spot a little bit better.
Do you get the sense that they're kind of like trying to play out the string with Justin Turner until they acquire somebody in a trade and then they can add that guy to the 40-man and get rid of Turner?
That's a possibility also.
I just don't think you can wait that long. This bench is like so horribly thin right now. I don't want them to have to do that.
Yeah, and it's funny because all the Cubs players talk about what a great influence Justin Turner is in the clubhouse.
I mean, he is. I mean, that's
he and his truck nuts.
But you don't need a freaking mascot right now. You don't need that on this team.
No.
You need a guy who can hit the baseball.
Yeah. When you're winning, everybody's good in the clubhouse.
Yep. And I get it, like, that Justin's that kind of key guy, but when you also have John Birdie and Vidal Brujan and stuff, like, that's not going to be good.
No. And that's the thing.
It's just, you have to have somebody who's useful in that situation.
They need to get some guys that can plug into the lineup and actually not be like they're standing up at the plate with wiffle bat.
Yeah.
Those are guys who can
I think I said on this podcast that it was like he was a guy who was hitting with a pool noodle. Like that's just the vibe that I get from him.
And the problem is you got guys in the minors who just don't really fit the role that they need. I mean, Alcantara could be the guy who, like I said, he can play all three outfield positions, but he's just going to get a steady diet of sliders.
That's all he's going to get until he proves he can hit it.
He's going to be like he's living at White Castle.
All right. The last thing we need to talk about on this here podcast tonight, another kind of little flippant segment, I will call it. Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. He threw out a first pitch the other day that I wouldn't quite put it on the level of a 50 Cent, but it was definitely not good. And I thought his reaction to it was kind of worth discussing. So if Claire can cue up that clip for our viewers. I think Lou Piniella probably could have done a better job throwing in a number 41 jersey. What about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the corpse of Tom Seaver could have.
I think that I want to know, is this a fair or foul thing? Like requesting another bite at the apple, Frank? Do you think that you should be allowed to do that? Or should you be told, one try is enough? Like I know it's like a first pitch and obviously who cares, but I also am like, you had one shot and you messed it up. Like this isn't a do-over kind of sport. What do you think about that?
I honestly wouldn't care about the first pitch unless you handed me the ball, and then I'd only care a little.
I want to know, like, do you have any fear in your soul that if you threw a first pitch out that you would do what he just did?
No, I pitched in high school and I'm good with crowds. I'd be fine.
I can attest to the latter in that scenario. Obviously, I did not watch you pitching, I was not privy to, old Hoss Nova back in his high school days, but I did not pitch in high school, and I probably have not actively thrown a baseball in about 10 years, I would say. I think it would be utterly horrendous. Claire, you probably pitched in high school too, right? Like, how would you do in a situation like that?
So I did not pitch in high school. However, my mom has thrown out a ceremonial first pitch at a Cubs game and did do it better than Alvin Kamara.
Do you have video evidence to support this?
I don't, because I was in like 7th grade, so I didn't have a phone.
Oh, so we're just gonna have to take the word of our esteemed producer for it.
We made her practice in the backyard, and she went out there in her Old Navy flip-flops and her capri jeans and stood on the pitcher's mound and threw the ball across the plate.
Did she practice in her Old Navy capris and flip-flops? That's
Probably.
my question.
Probably.
You have to envision success, and one of the ways you do it is you basically dress exactly the way that you would on game day. My big fear personally, I could go practice. My big fear would be a situation where it was like the Cubs social media nights that they've done, and a social media personality wins the opportunity to throw out the first pitch. That is like my ultimate fear, like my underwear in high school kind of like nightmare. Like, that's the level that I would be on. Like, if I had time to practice, this would be a different story. But like, the idea of doing it just cold like that, I would rather do about a million other things than that.
Oh, well, the other thing for me is I still play ball every Monday night.
Yeah, you still play, your rec league, and you rack up your home runs. You're a regular Casey at the bat, right?
Well, I play in a 55 plus league, so the fact that I'm there at age 62 with all of my original body parts puts me head and shoulders above pretty much everyone in the league.
I got to be completely honest with you, Frank. When you said 55 plus, I genuinely thought you were immediately going to go to 55 plus IQ. Like, I thought that was the place that you were going to go, just because I'm so used to you being like Mr. Self-deprecating. That jarred me a little bit that you weren't.
No. I mean, there's maybe 3 or 4 guys in our league who could hit the ball out, and I'm one of them.
Hell yeah, you are, dude. That's awesome.
My
dad actually plays in a 55 plus league too, and he is 64, and also, as far as I know, has all of his original parts intact. He's still got quite an arm too, so gives me a little bit of hope for aging gracefully watching my dad play softball for sure.
Oh yeah, and it's fun. I mean, we have a good time, and I'm amazed at how fast some of these guys can. I've never been a fast runner, so to me, everybody's fast, but some of these guys can really fly.
By the way, my dad did fail the Father's Day test, did not listen to that episode of the podcast. And so I don't think he will mind me saying that he always used to jokingly refer to himself as the Galloping Gazelle because he was such a stalwart cross-country athlete. So, Dad, if you listen to this particular podcast, just tell me the Galloping Gazelle story and I will know that you actually listened to it. Anything else before we close up shop, Mr. Nova? We've got one final week of games for the Cubs. They go to Minnesota. They play the Yankees out in the Bronx. So 6 games left before the All-Star break. Anything you want to throw out there before the Cubs embark on that last road trip?
I'd like to see a 4-2 come out of this.
Absolutely. Especially with the way the Yankees have been playing recently and the fact the Twins are not like the juggernaut of the AL Central. I think 4-2 is very reasonable. And I will also point out, the Cubs are on pace to win 97 games, even after some of their struggles in June. I'm just astounded that that's where they're at right now in the standings. It's unbelievable.
And, I will not be surprised at all if the Cubs go into the Bronx and just pitch around Herman Munster the whole weekend.
Why the hell wouldn't you? Who else on that? Cody Bellinger might burn you once or twice, but
Giancarlo Stanton.
Sure. But he's still not even at the peak of his powers either. And so, having said that, he's going to hit, 5
home runs this weekend.
We've officially ruined that now. But yeah, there's no reason in the world, unless you absolutely have to, I'm not letting Aaron Judge beat me. That's exactly where I'm at right now with him. That dude is just a straight up monster.
Yeah. So,
all right, Frank, I'm going to go enjoy National Fried Chicken Day here at home. going to help Claire clean up this podcast a little bit. We kind of went off on some tangents. I'm sure that she's going to want to cut. And thank you guys.
The Augie Galab story stays.
No, I will go to the mat fighting for that to stay in the podcast, Frank. It was such a delightful surprise that I think depriving our listeners and viewers of it would be an affront to God. And so I will ensure that stays in the podcast.
All right.
All right, guys, we will be back next week. We will talk I'm sure we'll talk some MLB draft with you, some second half predictions. We're going to be going into the All-Star break next week. Going to be a really good time. Thank you guys all for listening to this edition of Home Runs and Handshakes.